Hey, welcome everyone to our Summer Series Tuesday Talk. And today we are with Brian ONeill and Donna Peeples, and they are 5-time International Service Excellence Award winners. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the categories that they've won in over the years while we're going through this. But what I want to do is thank everyone here for being on and joining us today. We're going to have tons of fun. It's going to be really informative. These are two of my favorite people. Personalities are off the charts, so I hope you enjoy them as much as I do. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about Brian first. Brian is the Executive Vice President and Head of Client Engagement Banking Solutions at FIS. He serves as the head of client engagement, which includes all phases of the customer or client lifecycle. In this role, Brian unified all client relation functions under his leadership and added implementations, learning solutions, mass enablement, and the Center of Excellence to form Banking Solutions Client Engagement Organization. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Now, with all the client-facing functions under his leadership, the teams are focused on consistently delivering an excellent client experience in every interaction, hence the why they've won so many times. Prior to his current role, Brian was the Chief Client Officer for Banking Solutions and led the client relations function. And before that, he was the Chief Client Officer for FIS, former's payment division, and he has been named Chief Client Officer of the Year 4 years in a row by us, the Customer Service Institute of America. So he has individual wins as well. He has been with FIS since 2009 and has had several senior leadership positions there across sales and the client-facing function. Before joining FIS, ONeill held the roles of Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Operations Officer for Private Business, Inc., now part of Profit Stars, and he also held executive leadership roles in the healthcare and consumer packaged goods space. So welcome, Brian. Lots of roles. And then before we jump into our interviews, we have Donna Peeples as well. I had the pleasure of meeting her live last year during their awards interview, and it was so great to meet you. Donna is the Senior Vice President and Chief Client Officer, Banking Solutions at FIS, and Donna currently serves as the Senior Vice President, as I mentioned, of Client Relations and Chief Client Officer. In this role, she is committed to enhancing the client experience and oversees the key accounts, client care, and client success teams. Together, these teams provide frontline support and strategic partnership for all banking solutions accounts. Prior to FIS, Peeples served as the President and Chief Customer Officer at Pipestream, a SaaS technology startup. Prior to that, Peeples served in various executive leadership roles, including Chief Customer Officer at AIG, Senior Vice President of Corporate Communication, and Chief Marketing Officer at United Guarantee, and Vice President of Corporate Communications and Chief Marketing Officer at AGL Resources. Whew. Peeples has been recognized by the National Association of Professional Women. She had a Career Achievement Award in 2016, Pega World Customer Experience Innovation Award in 2014, Insurance Networking News Woman in Insurance Leadership Award 2014, Georgia Diversity Council as Most Powerful and Influential Women in Georgia in 2013, and the American Marketing Association Atlanta Marketer of the Year in 2009. So several individual award wins under your belt as well, Donna. And we are absolutely thrilled that you're joining us today for this interview style webinar. So without further ado, I would love to just jump right in. If you guys want to do any introductions prior to us doing our questions, please.
Hell no. I mean, that is so much, that is beyond what anybody could take. I think it's allow me to introduce myself, right? So, no, you did a good job. The only thing I would share with you and the audience is just that it's really just been a journey for us, right? As we continue on over the years, you've heard sort of coming out of the payments organization here in FIS, and then bringing in our banking group and bringing it all together. So when we talk, what you'll be really hearing about is that journey that we've been on. We call it sort of our path to excellence. And with that is really just the move to really creating a matrixed organization. So for those of you that are out there that live in the matrix, if you have questions or anything that you'd like to learn about that, we can certainly share the tough lessons we've learned along the way as well. But that's what's kind of been driving the direction that we've had. And obviously with Donna's background, thrilled to have her as part of our team going forward as well.
Awesome. And Donna, how about you? Anything you want to add before we jump in?
No, I mean, I think you did a great job, as you always do. And to Brian's point, I was just so amazed with the way the company was thinking about the client, that, as Brian said, it truly is a journey, and I think it's one that we never really get to the final destination. It's an evolution, if you will. And what huge shoes I had to fill in Brian, one of my client experience heroes of all time. So I'm just happy to be here and happy to be part of FIS.
Just for the record, our mid-year reviews have already been completed, so you can simmer down. It's all right.
Now, I do want to mention to the audience, when I did meet Donna, she did say that when she had learned about and all that was going on at FIS, she said, I have to work there. And she just figured out how she was going to be a part of this amazing team. So I'm excited to learn more about all that you guys have done since I've spoken to you last. So Brian, tell us briefly about your role at FIS as Executive Vice President, Head of Client Engagement. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I think the descriptor is correct, right? The idea was that we would bring together sort of the whole client life cycle. So the only thing really missing from the outset is the sales piece. But the way that we're organized, our head of sales, really our chief revenue officer, is my peer. We both report directly to the president. So we work very hand in glove with them in terms of when they complete a transaction, that moves over into our implementation group with our learning and solutions team as well. And then they ready that up and hand it off, warm handoff over to Donna and her team, which continues that relationship journey. And then the last piece is, so we sustain it and then we optimize it, right? So we also have our mass enablement group. So the idea behind that is just simply that once we have a client, we have them up and running, as we want to continue to bring new solutions to market, we do that through our mass enablement group. So in a really tough B2B environment, think of almost like an Apple Store sort of setup where we can enable new solutions for them as they go about. So the idea was to really do that. And that's why the idea, really the name of the group is being client engagement. When my boss called me the end of 2018 going into 19, and he said, hey, here's the vision. You've got all of client relations. Now I want you to move all this under one roof. That was why we felt like that was the appropriate name where we could put our arms around folks. The last thing that I would say is that, loyalty does start in the sales process. So the earlier in this whole journey that we can meet with the client up front, whether they're existing or new, I think the bigger impact that it has on our NPS scores as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Brian. And Donna, can you share what brought you to FIS and a bit about your role?
No, absolutely. Happy to. This guy, for one thing. And I was very fortunate. I knew of Brian prior to coming to FIS. There's a small little circle, brat pack, if you will, of client experience type folks with the mindset, and Brian's certainly one. I was fortunate enough to hear him last summer. Brian, right. I think you were in Orlando, and you were speaking about this major transformation that you were guiding FIS through. And I had known through, working in financial services about FIS, and I tracked, them and looked to them as inspiration for some of the things that I was doing, because, no secret, there was, just like consistent record growth, just amazing stories around the company. And it also appealed to me because, you think about this large company and, change is hard. People are naturally resistant, but the fact that this guy was bringing this company together and unifying the way it thought about the client at the center of everything it's doing, sign me up. He had me at hello. I was like, I think I was chasing you, Brian, to get a job there. And, you know, when his role was expanding, I mean, think about this, you know, I mean, there are a lot of chief client officers that either do not have the budget or do not have the seat at the table that Brian has created. And now you get this compounding impact of adding the likes of learning solutions, not just external to our clients, but also internal to our employees, which is where the experience begins. You think about implementations and what a power couple, you know, we can be if implementations can elegantly hand off to client support. You know, gosh, like I said, who wouldn't want to have that as part of, you know, their work career? It was just an amazing opportunity. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be part of it.
Yeah, and historically, I'd say, just looking at a lot of organizations, they don't always, you know, sales, integration, customer experience, and how that transitions it isn't seamless. It's sometimes it's a lot of pitting one almost against the other, in a sense that, you know, one's trying to clean up what somebody else is doing, or so I think from the onset, to your point as well, Brian, like where the closer you can get to a client sooner, the better off their overall experience is going to be, and the better you're going to be able to serve them. And I think getting those foundational pieces right immediately just serves you, the organization, and obviously the client long term.
Yeah, and you know, listen, it's not always perfect, and there are challenges. The one thing that Donna has embraced is this idea that we live on the street corner of velocity and complexity, right? So we're a large organization. We have an international footprint. We do business in 120 countries worldwide. We've got 400 sort of parent solutions that have sub solutions associated with them, and how they're organized. Some plug and play with some don't. And the sales guys will trip up sometimes, and they'll piece together a contract that may not actually be how it should be. So that's where the implementations folks and our project management teams will come in and work with them to kind of architect that. We're actually looking at, for the year 21, you asked what are the things we're thinking about. We're looking at a way to actually build out a tool to automate that, so that the sales guys can't kind of misformulate a solution set. The construct and the ideas are correct, but it would be almost like they're selecting the wrong UPC code off the shelf. We're looking to make sure that that doesn't happen, so that the contracts are correct, the expectations are correct, the SLAs are correct, all out of the blocks. So that's something that we're looking to put forward. We just pitched that actually in our capital pitch for 21. So these are the things that we're looking forward to as well. Again, that whole idea, you mentioned that our goal is to consistently deliver an excellent client experience, but our desire is actually to make it easier to do business with us. And so these are the tools that we want to arm our folks internally with, so that they can be more effective externally as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love the phrase easy to do business with, because I think that that's such a popular thing for organizations to say. But the trick is getting it right, because what might seem easy, which is like, just give them all these options of how they could contact us, or it's really making sure you understand where you're meeting the client at, where they want to be met, but making sure the solution works. I think sometimes everyone's putting everything out there and the solutions aren't ready, and making sure that they do work the way that they're supposed to, in order to make sure that you in fact are easy to do business with, and not causing more challenges and effort because you're trying to have the latest and greatest, but it's not maybe ready yet. Yeah. Okay, so Brian, share a little bit about the culture at FIS, especially within client engagement, because this is one of the things, this is why, you know, the award wins are happening for FIS. There's some kind of magic formula that you have there with your team that, you know, I don't know it can be replicated just by, you can't plug and play exactly what you're doing, but I think if you can share some of the magic things that you do to keep your team just the amazing team that they are. Tell me about your team and the culture, please.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a, we use the word context a lot around here. So let me frame the story. I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey. When I started 11 years ago, I actually had joined from a healthcare services company that was based in Nashville, Tennessee, that was a top 100 Fortune best places to work. And the culture there, when I joined there, having been in a fintech, a different fintech company, joining there, frankly, it kind of freaked me out a little bit. I mean, it was just the culture was just, it was almost like you couldn't believe it. And then once you're there, you're like, there is true authenticity to what they're doing. They're sort of what their focus was and what they were trying to do. So I was there for a while and I got to experience it and really see what the impact is on the employee engagement aspect of it and the impact that it had on our clients along the way. I remember joining here, and I was here only 6 months, and we were a totally different company 11 years ago. We were really just an image or an inkling of what we are today on a lot of different fronts. And the SVP of HR called me from that healthcare company and said, "Hey man, how are you doing? How do you like it?" And I said to him, I will never forget it. I said, "You never truly appreciate a culture until you're at a place that's devoid of one." And that was 11 years ago. And it was probably the biggest concern that I had, that we were very much a machine, right? We were just trumming along. We were doing a lot of acquisitions. We were great at acquiring, plugging in new pieces, getting the lift from it. But our identity was sort of lost along the way. So 4 years ago, when I got into the chair, the one thing that I really wanted to make sure that we did was establish and create and put an identity in place as to what our culture, what we want it to be. What I'm really thrilled to share with all of you, and I'll share this at the macro corporate level, and then I'm going to dovetail it back into what we do within our organization. Just at the beginning of this year, pre-COVID, and through work through the end of last year, we had acquired a large merchant acquiring company called WorldPay last year. So this was going to be really transformational, but the culture had to be right. So as a company, we worked extremely hard across the organization to develop what we thought was the correct value, the correct messaging, and the correct sort of statements. So for us, we took it from the premise of our 3 C's, which are our colleagues, our clients, and the communities in which we operate in. And then from there, we translate it down into this idea of winning as one team, leading with integrity, and being the change. So that's it. That's all that we have from a macro level within FIS, the 3 C's, and then the 3 drop downs that come a part of it. The thing that was great dovetail for us was that we as a company, or within our group, we had developed back in 2017 this idea of EX plus CX equals RX, where the employee experience plus the client experience creates better results, retention, and revenue expansion. So that being the RX. Our chief people officer, Denise Williams, loved it. She was all over it. And so when we brought this whole new culture forward in February in front of our entire leadership team, 400 people from around the world gathered in this pre-COVID environment at the time. When we launched what I just shared with you, the very last thing was to talk about that equation and that idea around it. So for us, when we talk about everything that we do, we align our strategy under EX, CX, and RX. And the way that we drive it is through really 4 simple things that we bring forward. We talk about it from advocacy, responsibility, accountability, and fun. And the thing about those 4, they were created 4 years ago by my directs team. And when we were in the room doing it, I said, look, I'm going to be an impartial person. I'm not going to sway the vote on what we come up with, but there's only one request that I have. Fun is one of them. And so we've kept fun in there the whole time. And the joy of those 4, again, advocacy, responsibility, and accountability with fun, they haven't changed. So I think the thing about culture is it takes a long time. You have to be patient, but you also have to be persistent, and you can't be afraid to keep pushing that message out. That's the one constant drumbeat that we've done. And I think that's what people have seen, is that we haven't deviated from it. And it's given them the confidence to say, hey, you know what? I believe these guys. I trust these guys. Now I want to be part of the fabric of that culture. So I think that's been the greatest part of the journey. That'll bring you from the Wayback Machine all the way to where we are currently.
Yeah, so it's one thing, kind of putting all those things in place and all those puzzle pieces, but how, like, I know you're kind of keeping it at the forefront, but what are some of the ways that you keep the messaging at the forefront so that they don't think this is like some flash in the pan or some, leader trying to make their mark for these 18 months before you guys move on to something else? How is it that you are driving that forward and then as a result seeing the change?
Yeah, so it's funny you said puzzle pieces, and there's two of my colleagues from my leadership team are on this call as well, and I'm sure they're laughing on mute right now. So when with this now COVID environment, going to virtual town halls, our whole thematic this year is actually around putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So the EX image pops up with the CX image, and then it plugs into the RX. I will tell you that it's around the consistency. It's around that drum beating, and it is around communication. And you've seen it because I give you the book every year, The Path.
Mm-hmm.
So for your audience, what The Path is and where it started was literally 4 years ago. As I went into this role, I had 700 people in my organization, and I thought, how can I reach out to this team to make sure that we're all on the same, we're thinking the same thing, we're talking about the same thing. So while I wrote it from the perspective of like a travel log early on, because I was traveling nonstop, what I was really trying to do is give my leadership team the same talking points so that when they would have their staff meeting, they could say, hey, did you read in the path? Hey, did you see in the path? Hey, did you hear? And this is what's really important, and this is what's coming. This will blow your mind, Christine. This weekend will be the 200th edition of the path.
Wow.
100 editions of them over 4 years.
Yep.
And so our CEO he was a guest contributor for me. This past weekend was 199. My boss is the president. He contributed, but the message has never deviated. And that sounds serendipitous, but what it does is it kind of just demonstrates. What's interesting is a lot of the folks that work here are long seasoned and long tenured.
Mm-hmm.
So they've seen sort of things come and go, but this one hasn't gone away. So they're like, they either have a choice. They either get on board or they know they have to get out. And I know that sounds harsh, but if you want the best outcomes, that's what's got to happen. So I think the communication piece of it has been really important. Our virtual town halls this year, we're doing a lot of videos. We try to make them very entertaining. One of our colleagues, I promise you, broke into full Ron Burgundy in her portion the other day. Unexpected and unbelievably excellent. When you go through this year, when we do the end of year testing with you and you see what we're doing and we show you some of these videos, you are going to lose your mind. So we're trying to have as much fun with this as we can and use a different medium to connect. Where I had been in person in the room with folks, we're actually finding that we're being a lot more intimate when we're actually at home with them and they get to see your pets and your dogs and feel you as a human being. So it's really been, while trying, it's been an interesting opportunity for us as well.
I love that you say that because as far as being able to engage with your team in a different way, and I know this is kind of shooting off a little bit of script, but I think that there's opportunities for everyone during this time, right? And one of the things for leaders is to really be able to get to know their team a little bit better, allows for some fun, because there's a couple ways that people can go, right? So we know that there are some who are like really still want it to be professional and work focused all the time. But I mean, let's be real. If we're all in our homes, I mean, I have no doubt my lighting's probably going to fall at any second, right? So, I mean, that's going to happen. You guys can watch for it. But I think just trying to bring a little sense of humor to it when so many people are at home and things are not always very fun. And,
what I can tell you is if a dog does not bark during a video call, it's not a video call.
Yeah.
And so I'm fortunate today because I'm actually in my office in Jacksonville, and I'm here because there's work going on at my house, and I knew there was no way with dogs in the house and workers that any of this would work.
Yeah.
But to your point, in something that Donna does every Friday at 5:00, she has a virtual cocktail hour with her leadership team, and then she invites folks in. So she's had our CEO has come and attended with his chief of staff. The head of sales, North American sales, and his leadership team have been there. And so you get to see, and they're all watching the people on Zoom. We use the same medium, and they're watching people. And, it's funny, you'll see people sitting back, or they'll lean in and they'll have their hats on. Donna did a hat day one time. Look, if you can't laugh at what's going on now, then you're doomed, right? You have to embrace this and try to have the most fun with it. And I promise you guys, the results speak volumes. Our metrics are as good or better across the board on every level. And you can ask our CEO, the things that we've accomplished, he thought could never be done. And we did them with half a day's notice. So these are the types of things that we've done. And part of giving people that freedom, I think, lets them celebrate it and ensures that they stay engaged in what it is that we're doing. And like I said, there's a subtlety to this. In a weird way, we're being more intimate because we're in them and we're seeing each other than we were when we were in an office and it would be a flight in and a hotel, just some time in the town hall and then out. This is, in a weird way, a little bit more intimate that we're leveraging as well.
Yeah, and Brian, thanks for that shout out on the happy hours. It's really incredible, when you have Brian attending, you have the CEO who spends an hour with your team and just really rolls up his sleeves and has a drink with everybody and just talks. He
was crushing a beer. He had his Miller Lite going. It was great.
And I'll tell you, bragging a little bit, in the midst of all this, and we're navigating the unknown here in real time, and our clients are as well. Just last month, we posted a 2-year high in overall customer satisfaction.
Wow.
And you heard it here first.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I love the way you guys are just continuing to drive the message forward, but like showing up with it even in times like this and figuring out how to make it work. So that's awesome. So with that in mind, employee experience is key, right? You were saying that is a big part of the equation. Employee experience plus customer experience is going to equal the results for the organization. So how does your employee experience play a role to the overall health of your organization?
Yeah, I think it's absolute. It's the only way I would describe it. And look, we've all read the books that talk about higher engagement and the Gallup work with Q12 and all those sorts of things are indicators of what your NPS can be, or your ESAT, or your customer satisfaction. We take it very seriously as an organization. I'll give you a little bit of insight. So candidly, I would prefer that we use Gallup because I came through the Gallup world. I've used Q12 in a past life. We use Glint. This year we had 32 questions for our employees. Our participation rate across 55,000 people is in the high 80s across the entire company. Within just our group of client engagement, which is 2,200 folks right now, it's moving up to 3,500 before the day is over. But this year we had a 93% participation rate. So 93% of our 2,200 folks filled out and answered those 32 questions. And we study them. We study their answers. We study their verbatims. We read every one of them, and then we report back on them. So they get that we take their voice very seriously. So just doing that has a huge impact on their engagement with us because they know that their voice is being heard. I think beyond that, it is all the things that we've talked about so far here, right? So it's recognition programs like our TLC program that we have. It's ways that we do within the path where we call them out. We do monthly highlights of success stories across the organization. As Donna said, the fact that the CEO shows up to a virtual sort of, a total impromptu, the most casual environment you could be, all of these things just speak volumes to how important they are. And then the other thing that I would tell you, in light of these unprecedented times, we've reacted from a people office perspective with heavy focus on mental health and actually extending and enhancing what our employee benefits are. So from a typical EAP program to teledoc services to a variety of different things that we've made available, all of these things just speak to the fact that we care about our employees. That's all they're longing for, is that they want to just know that you genuinely are thinking about them and that you care about them. And then how I would wrap this up is, and it's crazy to think about, but it's the word resources. It's the one thing that we don't think much about because I'm on my laptop here in my office. I've got a printer here. I've got a printer at home. So for some of us, it's just like, well, I'm connected, I can do my thing. But when you really listen to our folks and we make it easy for them to get VPN and VPN connectivity and new software and have the latest and greatest from laptops, those sorts of resources, we jumped off the chart this year. And I would tell you it had a huge impact on our overall Glint scores. In fact, Glint said that they do the survey every year for over 500 companies. We were #1 across that whole population in total growth year over year. And we surveyed about halfway through where we are in this COVID journey. So maybe there's a COVID bounce because we did such a great job transitioning. But I will tell you, I think we're going to see this going forward. I think a lot of people have a greater sense of what we do, what our purpose is in the marketplace, but then pride in working here as well. So it's been kind of neat to see it that way as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, I mean, that first off, 80% survey take rate across the organization, and then 93% just within your client engagement piece. Yeah, so just, is there anything that you can share with us that maybe has come through the client engagement surveys where, or your employee engagement surveys where they're giving you some feedback on something and you guys have acted on it, and, you know, showcasing that you really are paying attention to their issues?
Yeah, so every year, what we do is we as a team, in fact, we just finished this 2 weeks ago. So my leadership team, we study all the results and we look at our lowest 3 performers. And actually we looked at our lowest 5 this year and we determined that we were going to focus on 3 of them. But year over year, so last year, as crazy as it sounds, was communication. And what we found out was we over communicate to them and they don't really know what's the most important things that they should be reading. So it was really important for us to kind of dive into what are the different mediums, what are the different ways that they want to receive information, how do they want to be trained, what do they want to be taught, what's pertinent to them, what are certain things that aren't. And then the other thing too is the language that we use. We forget, right? We talk sometimes way too high level, and it's just almost like we get caught up in our own. I know there's the corporate BS bingo cards that are out there, and they don't want it, right? And you read this in the survey results, and it's just like, look, talk to me like you're having dinner with me, right? Bring it down to that level. And I would tell you, last year we did that in the communication area. You could see really jump up. I mentioned resources. The resources thing, the biggest challenge for us, because we're 55,000 people, you know, we're bringing in people, we have turnover, and onboarding new folks can be a challenge. And then if they do have an issue with their system, sometimes it's challenging as well. We literally just got off a call that we're completely streamlining the entire experience of if you have an issue and how do you get a ticket open and how do you get resolution. We look at bots, all those sorts of things, all as a direct outcome of those verbatims that we saw. So we look at our employees as if it's also the equivalent of client feedback as well. And our teams are moving around that. So it's truly, when I say that we look at it from an EX and then the CX, you can really see how they impact each other. But the work streams that are in place, even on the EX part of it, is just critical. And I would tell you, unconditionally, it's a result of the feedback they give us from the Glint scores.
Well, and bragging on Brian a little bit and his leadership, one of the consistent top scorers was around the management team. And that means at all strata. You know, it's great to have these wonderful, grandiose ideas at the highest level, but that's not where it happens. It happens at the ground level. And, you know, unless you can thaw that frozen middle where it's always easier to keep the status quo, you know, Brian has managed to influence the managers at every level to carry this message. And they're really inspired to do the right thing, not only by the employees, but also by our clients. So, you know, as Brian said, you know, a great client experience truly begins with a great employee experience.
Yeah, we just have this idea that what shows on the outside is a reflection of what's on the inside. Mm-hmm. And look, not everybody is happy here. Not everybody loves this place. I mean, it's not serendipity and all that. But I do think that there's a greater appreciation for how committed we are to the success of the employees. And again, in a very weird way, that's what COVID brought out in us, that commitment was always there. But I think it's just so much more tangible for the teams to see because of the commitment that we've made.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I think you make a good point too, of just making sure that the managers and their teams are getting the message as well. That is very hard to do. I mean, you could be a leader that just believes it and pushes it, but if your managers can't sell it the same way or don't believe it the same way, and that is a huge testament to how you're packaging it and making sure that they understand that this is integral in everything that you're doing as a business. Because the easiest thing to do right now, and I think many of us potentially are guilty of this, is that during this time, it's really just easier to phone it in. I mean, it's like, yeah, nobody's really paying attention. Like, I'm here, look at me in the box. I'm here, I'm listening, and you don't necessarily, as long as you keep the business going, I think a lot of people are like, that's a win for the day. But you guys are still looking at improving, showing that you're caring, committing the resources that are necessary to make sure they feel like, just like your customers, you want it to be easy for them to do business with you. You want your team members to feel that it's easy to be productive for you.
Yeah, so there was a really unique point in time, I can tell you unequivocally. Early stage, right? So again, I mentioned the international footprint. As this was flaring up in India and the Philippines, we've got a significant presence. This isn't just classic sort of offshore type of stuff. These are people that perform critical functions for us, both domestically and internationally. And you could start to see what was happening there. So there was tremendous effort in place. I happen to be part of our crisis management team, the pandemic crisis management team. We were meeting every single day, 7 days a week, hours, 2-3 hours at a time, making sure that we had all the right things in place. But I can tell you, about 30 days in, I said to my team, okay, forget about the new normal. We've got to move to what's next. We can't wait. This isn't going to normalize. We've proven that we can answer the phones, we can resolve tickets, we can, for the first time in the history of this company, do implementations remotely. We can do training via these sorts of apparatus and mediums. Now we need to get back to what we were here to do to start 2020 and recommit to the things that we knew we had to get done this year. And it was right at that point, it was a sea change. You couldn't rest on phoning it in and just say, well, it worked today, so it'll work again tomorrow and it'll be fine. We challenged ourselves to get back to business and really say, hey, look, we know that we've got challenges from an expense basis. We know that revenue is going to be impacted. We've got to get ahead of this. And I think to Donna's point, what our management team does, and we do a team of teams or an extended leadership call every 2 weeks, they get to hear from the very top level exactly, but we're listening from them as well to hear what they're seeing and experiencing from the ground level. So we make sure that we stay aligned that way. But once we made that switch, honestly, it was about 30 days in, I'm like, this is scaring me. It's too convenient to be distracted by the challenge. We've got to get back to doing the business of moving this forward.
Yeah, and I will say, Brian, you hearkened to it a little bit earlier. We haven't missed one beat as far as thinking about, how do we continue to innovate in this virtual world? How do we think about scaling in this world? How do we think about better utilizing the resources that we have? And a lot of that focus, we're fortunate to have a center of excellence that provides a lot of governance for us, but also helps us to connect the dots internally. And a lot of the work around automation, around, AI that I believe, and I know Brian believes, is literally table stakes. It's not about, one channel or another these days. It's about being everywhere all the time, whenever the client wants you to be. So I will say, I've been just amazed that, the machine is still churning. In fact, I feel like it's picking up speed and steam towards some of these innovative changes to our processes.
We probably have more collective work going on across the organization around the client experience than at any time in the history of FIS.
Agreed.
And I think the challenge that we have is making sure that our sales team fully understands that they can position it as a value proposition, because we're in a very competitive market environment, and it's a subtlety. But when you can demonstrate that commitment, so we've demonstrated resiliency through our networks and our technology that we could stand all these folks up. But now to be able to say this is also what we've got planning going forward, I think is really I think how we're going to win. It's frankly, it's a reflection of our CEO and our president. So my boss directly is Bruce Lothers. I mean, everybody hears the expression, don't let a crisis go to waste, right? So we really believe that this is an opportunity for us to demonstrate to the market and an opportunity to continue to take market share. I mean, it's just, that's how committed we are to this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's awesome. So many good pieces just in that one response. And one of the things that always stands out for me, and the one thing that you said, I wanted to bring out for people who are listening, just because they might have missed it. But one of the things that had popped forward in your customer or your employee engagement survey was over communication, which everybody feels like, no, over communication is good, but really honing in on the message and fine tuning it and making sure they understand what's important is key. So I just wanted to make sure nobody missed that, because I think we have a tendency to just like spew out whatever we think might be necessary. Like they might maybe want to know this, right? Versus this is what is key.
What's interesting is we get that feedback from our clients, and they say, you're inundating us with bulletins or updates, or there's a change coming, or there's a mandate, or because we've got a lot of compliance sort of things, regulatory. So we've actually moved to a number of different channels. We've allowed them to actually go into our client portal and select what types of communications they want, so we can customize it for them. They can also opt out of all of them and just get a weekly recap. So based on their areas of interest, they can get that. And what's interesting is not even just for the employees within or the colleagues within client engagement. Part of the challenge of being in the matrix is we are the provider for, and my peers are my customers, right? Mm-hmm. So the folks that are running the lines of business, we're providing the service for them. And we've really just kind of run into this here going through our capital requirements, and we're preparing our 2021 budget. So in our interlock meetings, it really came out that there's a lot of things that they're not aware of that we're doing. And we can be frustrated and say, man, they're not reading our emails. I can't believe they're not aware that we're doing that. But that's shame on us. So what our Center of Excellence is doing right now is they've created a complete matrix of all the different methods in which we communicate. And we're asking the question of, man, we've got to dial this back down. And we've got to dial it in so that they know when something's coming from us, that's the email they need to open. That's the video that they need to watch. Mm-hmm. So it definitely breaks both ways. And I want to make that point for everybody, that the things that your clients are telling you are just a louder voice of what your own employees are thinking themselves. And we've got to have that awareness. That's why I said earlier, it's so critical that we're running this heavy focus on EX and CX at the same time. And we're sharing the learnings from each and making sure that they overlap in that light.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, I'm just taking a peek at time, because I know with our questions that we might have a lot of content. So I will jump into the questions, and we'll just try and go through some of the answers quicker, or maybe we'll run a little over. Just a warning for participants. I don't know if you guys have a hard stop, but one of the things that I loved hearing about that you guys have done such a great job with is something called your TLC program, your Teach, Learn, Challenge program. You guys want to share a little bit about that with the group?
Yeah, I'll open it up, and then maybe I'll let Donna share a little bit just from her perspective coming in from the outside. We mentioned this idea of consistency and being just not allowing the culture to kind of be sort of quickly, just losing sight, right? The attention span of a household fly. And what we wanted to do is create something that would allow us to recognize our colleagues. So Teach, Learn, Challenge is really just this idea of a challenger model in a more polite way, right? So the idea of it was this, that when I had the sales organization here at FIS and my sales team, I would tell them that a meeting wasn't effective if when we left, there wasn't a teaching moment where we were able to share something from our knowledge and our footprint in the market that we could share with our clients. So be very almost consultative in that light. A learning moment where we're leaning in and listening from them so that we can understand what their challenges are. But then there also has to be a challenging moment. This is the part that freaks everybody out. What do you mean challenge your clients or challenge your people? And challenging means that it's based on a foundation of a very positive relationship, but that you'd be willing to challenge one another about it, or say to them, I know that's how you feel. Others have felt that way, but we've really found that this is a better way for you to go. So with that, we kind of developed these TLC pins. This is our 2020. We're 4 years in. The ramp and the number of folks that get this, and they're all self-directed. So the employees recognize others and they send in. Managers can recognize their own colleagues, and we also recognize our clients as well. So we make a big to-do about clients that have made us better. We recognize them. Those that sit on our client councils and our board advisory boards, they all get them. And in fact, I had the opportunity at towards the end of last year to present to our board of directors, and I got to hand every one of them a TLC pin as well. Always good to do to soften the audience a little bit, to come in with some gifts. But it was a great way. It was a great way that I wanted our board of directors to know this is what the culture represents. So, Donna, I'd be curious from your perspective, coming in from the outside and seeing how we celebrate the TLC pins and what that's meant from you and what you've seen as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of those brilliant things. It's actually become a badge of honor that employees and our clients, even as Brian said, they're just, it's just brilliant in recognizing that, you know, we're thinking about things in the right way, that we're not just keeping clients and our employees in mind, but we're taking them to heart every single day in everything we do. And I will say, one of the sweetest gifts Brian has ever given me is after I heard him speak in Orlando in the summer of last year of 2019, I got in the mail my very own TLC pin before I had become an employee of FIS. And we had just had such a great conversation around, you know, the importance of thinking about, you know, the clients first, but employees always. It was just very powerful, and it remains powerful, I think.
And I'll tell you, we've had a number of multi-winners. So we actually created a platinum version as well the last 2 years, because they were starting to look like they worked at Fridays, right? They had flair. They had
all the flair.
pins, right? So we're like, let's reward them and just give them one platinum. So
yeah,
very nice.
And there's great publicity, you know, internal too. So it's not just, you know, something that is given discreetly to, you know, the recipient. It's something that, as Brian said, we make a big to-do about. And there's a recognition component to this, that, you know, we're thinking and doing things the right way. We're not just saying it, we're doing it.
right.
You might have to start adding gemstones on to the platform because I don't know.
Diamonds are a girl's best friend.
Right. Hey, men can wear diamonds well too.
Absolutely.
All right, awesome. So yeah, I love that. I love that program. I have one of those pins that was awarded to me, which was, it's like, I love it. I make sure I always have it when I see you guys, and I appreciate it and think that it's a wonderful thing that you're able to include your clients, your team, and just open it up to everyone. I think that's huge.
The funny thing is, our CEO got upset at the board meeting because he said, man, I've been here. What do I got to do to get a TLC pin? I said, don't worry, I've got one for you as well. So, I mean, it sounds silly, but it's that recognizable at this point. So, and the exciting thing for us is, and I alluded to earlier, we're going to grow as a team here significantly by the end of this week, because we formally are bringing in all of our international colleagues in client relations and implementations as well. And I had a concern about the cultural implication of it. And I've talked to a lot of my colleagues that are internationally based, and I'm like, no, recognition sells and plays across cultures. It's something that you guys have that they can then feel more akin to a connection at headquarters. So this is something that we're going to bring in and roll out internationally as well. So we're excited about that. Oh,
that's great. That's good to hear. All right. So Donna, during the awards judging, we spoke about the desk audit program. Can you share a little bit about what that is and why you thought that this was something that was necessary? And I'm curious also what the impact was to this desk audit program and how this was received by the team members.
Absolutely. And, you know, we introduced the program because we felt like we needed a way to govern those client interactions. And you know, we can roll out processes, we can do trainings, but how do you really ensure that not only is it implemented, but it's operationalized? And so, you know, performing these audits really helped us to get a clearer picture, you know, into what's really happening out there on the front lines. And, you know, some of the components that we audit regularly are ticket reviews. We look at phone reviews. We measure transactional scores and how we're interacting. We have monthly reporting too that is an interactive dashboard so that we have visibility into the team and individual performance so that, you know, we understand.
Oh no, did she freeze up on us?
She did freeze.
Oh no.
Donna, you're frozen.
Perfect timing. So now it's officially an at-home, work-from-home meeting.
Yes, exactly. Or she's just, you know, pretending and she's just trying to psych us all out. So I'm not sure which.
I think what I can tell you is I think where she was going was just the idea that we wanted to have a measurement too, so we could see how our teams are progressing. So we'd set a standard for them. They're tested in essence every month. They know what the results are. Donna, you froze on us. I'm just answering
Sorry,
the rest
I
of the
was
question.
being so eloquent.
No, it was
I know,
perfect.
it was going well.
But
Well,
the one piece that I would add that's pretty wild about what we've done with it is, as we see their scores start to move up to a level where they're consistently high, we actually add additional hurdles for them to jump. And we'll see their score go back down for maybe the next 2 or 3 months until they've perfected that skill set. So there's continuous learning that's a part of this as well. And Donna hit it right on. It really is a governance component so that our colleagues know that we're inspecting what we're expecting. And the way in which we do it is, it's actually very eloquent in the scoring that comes up. And then we share those scores with our line of business leaders so that they can see the progression of my team members as well.
yeah, and an important thing, here's a news flash, you know, for this year, we've not only continued to look at client relations, we've also expanded it into my teammates area, implementations. As I said earlier, you know, we are the power couple in making good on the brand promise that our sales team makes. So
again, that's a subtlety that, from a market perspective, if you're a customer or you're a prospect and you understand that we're doing that sort of behind the scenes governance to see and track, and frankly, and just so everybody's clear on the team, we also know who the bottom performers are as well. And those managers are to have conversations with them. And if they bottom dwell for more than 2 cycles, they're on a PIP, right? So it's an opportunity for us to make sure that everybody is living up to that idea of consistently delivering an excellent experience in every interaction. And the idea of bringing it into implementations, that had never been done before. And frankly, the implementations teams were always very siloed within the specific product. But now that we've brought them in a very horizontal view, we're bringing together all these different approaches that we've leveraged and learned from client relations that we can bring forward. So we're excited about that.
Awesome. And remind me, is it a quality team that's doing it? Is it peer desktop auditing? Who's doing it?
We third party it. We actually leverage offshore resources. So we pay for internally resources, and there's a part of it that they can score and that it's automated. But then as Donna mentioned before she froze, the managers actually do listen to calls too. So there's a scoring component of the call taking itself. And then the final piece, and she mentioned, is the transaction level surveys. So we know how each of the reps are performing based on the immediate surveys that come back from our clients as to how that ticket resolution went.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you. Donna, another thing is during the awards interviews, you were talking about transitioning into a single IVR. So, I mean, obviously Brian was talking about earlier, lots of bank acquisitions over the years. That translates in my mind to lots of phone numbers, lots of places, lots of confusion for the customer. So probably some people listening that have something similar going on at their organization. So can you share a little bit about that program?
Yeah, absolutely. And credit goes to, I get to be the front man for great work that was done in large part by our Center of Excellence. And really bringing in what was at the time 60 phone numbers that clients had to sort through. And I'll tell you, coming in from the outside myself, I had the advantage of our intranet to try to sort through and figure out the organization. But, clients were having a very difficult time. So, under the client engagement umbrella, we brought together all those numbers into a singular 800 number. And we also applied Smart IVR to it, which is, again, Christine, one of those things that we're going to be showing you at the end of this year, some of the improvements that we're making there, where we have voice recognition and we have other opportunities to really speed the way to resolution for our clients, to really get them where they need to be, so that you get the right information the first time, every time. And this technology acts as a guardrail to get them to resolution as quickly as possible every time. So we're just really excited about that, and have had great reviews and comments from our clients on the consolidation of those phone numbers. We could have had our own phone book, I think.
Yeah, how long did that take to get that executed?
Gosh,
it was like a day, just a 2 days.
Yeah, I'm sure you decided and it was done.
Yeah, it was done.
Yeah, it was less than a year, but
I'll probably get a ping will pop up on my screen. It was less than 6 months. It was in the 6-month range. To be honest with you, our network team were tremendous partners for us within our CIO organization, identifying all of those numbers and then validating where they truncated, right? Where did they go? And then to Donna's point, when you come in and we validate that who you are and who you say you are, you then have options. You can speak what your ticket number is, and it'll take you right to the ticket owner. So that's the way in which we've created. So this all goes back to that idea of making it easier to do business with us, that desired state. And also, if you're listening closely, you might think, well, there's a lot of B2C companies that have this. That's not really breakthrough technology. That may be the case, but in the land of B2B, historically, it's always been a laggard. We're now trying to not only catch up, but blow past that. So when this idea of omni-channel comes into play and the different channels that we can allow for our clients to come in to actually self-service, we think the IVR is another great way for them to do that.
Absolutely. And to credit the CIO partners that we have, the portal that our clients use, we've just deployed I hate to even call it a chat bot, because it's so much more. It's really a conversational AI tool that helps clients to navigate the portal. Again, Christine, like, you have said, we talked about before, it's not about one channel or the other. My doctor's office still uses a fax machine, for Pete's sake. So, it's about everything all the time. And I think we're doing a really great job of honing in on, where can we have the greatest impact in the shortest amount of time and satisfy our customers.
That's great. Well, you know what? I want to backtrack a little bit. We had a question come in. It says, how will you manage a bottom performer who has not been able to better his or her performance in spite of a PIP?
Well, I mean, honestly, we don't go to them and say, look, you're not doing well, you're on your own, figure it out. When we do go with them, we've got such a litany of resources to help improve their understanding of the product and 2 and 3 minute snippets to really help on really sorts of things, library of Congress that's out there. So we try to give them very specific direction on what it will take to be successful. We're not just saying, look, you're not doing well. If you don't get it straight, you're out of here. The onboarding cost, as everybody knows, is very high. If we hired the person, we saw something in them that we thought they could do it. But at the end of the day too, and I mentioned Gallup earlier in the discussion, everybody has unique strengths. And sometimes folks are in a job that it just doesn't align with what their strengths are. And sometimes their weaknesses show. And in those situations, if we have an opportunity to move a person into a different role where we think they would be better suited, we'll do that as well.
Well, and I will say this, one of the cornerstones of the culture, and one of the first videos I watched from the CEO when I joined the company was one where Gary Narcross said, I want this to be the last place you work, but not your last job. So one of the observations I've made is that, the company takes great care of its talent to make sure that our resources are deployed in the right way, where the employee is satisfied and feels like they are making a contribution to the greater good, but also that, the company is benefiting, and for us, that the client is also benefiting. Not everybody is, geared to be a support person. Not everybody is geared to be a relationship person. And I think the company does a great job of really sorting through the skills and the acumen and the attributes, at the point of entry and onboarding folks so that we understand.
And that is huge. That's huge for everybody, because you don't want to wait. Nobody wants to waste time or money, right? So on
Absolutely.
either side. So real quick, it is 12:01. I know a couple people have had to drop off, so I wanted to say if there's anybody listening, thank you. I know you might need to go. Questions, Brian and Donna, where are your hard stops? Do you have another 15 minutes to finish off some of the questions?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, awesome. All right, so Donna, what are your thoughts on keeping the team executing at the top of their game consistently? So we've talked a lot about some of the strategies that you guys use and what is working right now, but what are your thoughts about making sure that that's happening for your team?
Well, I think a lot of it is around communicating, where we are and having a and then coaching goals. And you speak with people on the front line, they don't, to really make sure that we're engaging the employees. I mean, that's where some of the best ideas come from. I mean, they're up close and personal. They represent the brand every single day. And, their experience, if we listen to them, and I think that's one thing that this company does really well, we encourage them. Don't just think about a 2x improvement, think about a 10x improvement. And give them the voice to really make those changes. I think, engagement is key. And that's something that this company does really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. If they are engaged in their job, they know that they're valued, they know that you're listening, you're getting great ideas from them, you're executing on them, then they're always going to work to the top of their game.
Absolutely. And giving them the space to say, we want you to innovate, and okay, maybe things don't always happen perfectly. Attribution. I mean, it's like, we want you to experiment. We want you to help us figure out how do we take it to the next.
Yeah. Yeah, making it a comfortable space for them to be able to do that, safe space, if you will. Okay. All right, I got frozen. Both of you guys are frozen on my side. Hopefully we'll come back here in just a second. Oh, okay, everybody's back.
Okay.
I wasn't sure how that was going. All right, anything that you want to add with that, Brian?
No, I made you may have missed it, but I made the point that it's so ingrained into the cultural piece that we test it in our Glint survey to make sure that people feel that they have the freedom to share their opinion and without retribution. And, if you're willing to ask the question, then you have to be willing to hear the answer. And I think that's I think that speaks volumes for how we approach the input from the colleagues or the employee engagement aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome. All right, Brian, 2020 has made it even more challenging for us to serve our clients. What has an FIS been doing to stay focused? I know you covered some of this. Is there anything additional you want to add about what you guys have been doing during this time to keep you guys on track?
Yeah, I think what I would share with everybody, it's pretty wild. We, as a company, we've been on a journey to modernize our systems, not only the platforms to support our products, but all the things I mentioned from a resources perspective internally. We've gone so far as to actually self-impose SLAs or service level sort of requirements on ourselves if there is an outage, especially on the consumer-facing applications that we deliver. So again, in terms of just speaking to the market and saying, look, this is how confident we are, and this is what you get with your partnership from us. But as I mentioned, we were early on work from home. Before this call started, for everybody that's listening still and watching, Christine and I were talking a little bit about the last time I was in my office, and it was March 12th. It was a Thursday. And on the 13th, I had given a direction that I wanted my whole entire organization to be work from home on the 16th. So at that point, as a company, we hadn't made that formal call. It actually was a week later, but I had worked with our CIO organization in advance and said, if I give you the list, are we ready to go? They verified where all my folks were and said, we have the capacity. Yes, go. And that's a reflection of their planning and the modernization piece. So who would have thought that it was a pandemic that would have tested this? But where we sit today, and I can tell you with inside of 2 weeks, 95% of our 55,000 folks were working from home. I mean, that is what's staggering. And I mentioned that our Glint scores really jumped this year. And our CEO has held, and he's got one coming up in 2 weeks, he's held sort of open forum town halls for all employees. And it was interesting listening to folks call in with questions and make comments early on about how they're at home working, but their spouse still can't get connected. And just the things that we did in that subtlety, and frankly, it's a reflection of our business continuity planning. You guys know we've got a hot tropics going on right now. There's 3 different tropical storms that are laid out there. And so we plan every year big time around hurricanes. Who would have imagined that we have a hurricane hitting the entire world at the same time? But that's really how we've played. That's been what our playbook has been. So I would share that with you. The other thing that I would just close with, just around what our purpose is, and I mentioned that I think our employees, and really frankly, even some of our clients got to see this, is we're on the forefront of stepping up and setting up a PPP solution inside of 2 weeks. So payroll protection plan. We put 60 plus banks on it, but we processed 150,000 loans through that for a tune of, I'll get the number wrong, so somebody keep me straight, but I think it was 15 billion, I think is what we put through. It was. So $15 billion went to the small to medium-sized businesses through that pipe. We did similar work with our government where we do EBT, and we set up a pandemic EBT. We're funding $5 billion per month, putting it on cards so that the less fortunate, those that can't get a meal every day, especially kids that weren't being able to go to school, through the government work that we do with them as well. And then, we also allowed for forbearance and skip a pay through our different solutions as well. So all of these things that would have taken a long time and been project oriented, and I mentioned even our ability to do implementations remotely, these are things our team were turning around inside of days. The mobilization of the team to understand just how critical our actions were, we broke down so many barriers doing this. I mentioned this in a note. One of our board of directors sent a note the other day just talking about how blown away they were hearing what we've done. We had our board meeting last week, and I sent a note to my peers and our leadership team on my organization that said, within about the first 3 weeks, Gary Norcross called me. I was home, obviously, and I told him, I said, we're doing things right now that when you really see the full implication of, you're going to be blown away. And I got to share that note back to everybody and said, this is the reality of what we've done. So the thing that I would tell everybody is people are far more resilient than we give them credit for. They're more apt to make more change than they're capable of. But we also need to be wildly sensitive to what this is doing from a stress and a mental health perspective at the same time. So I think if you balance those things and you're demonstrating that care, I think you'll see your people performing at a level that you've never thought imaginable.
No, great points. I mean, great way to tie it all up. Thank you, Brian. We do have a question. Someone, Lourdes is asking how to stay persistent. And I'm guessing that just means from a standpoint of what pursuit, like keeping things moving forward. Is that, Lourdes, if you can clarify that? Yes. Okay. So making sure you're keeping everything moving forward, not being stagnant when maybe people are dealing with some at-home stress. Some are, like me, love being locked inside. I'm good. Right? Others not so happy about it.
Yeah, I have both in my house. I have an extrovert and an introvert, my two girls. My introvert thinks this is the greatest thing in the world. She loves doing her art and being in her own, like her bedroom's become her studio. I think we talk about being relentlessly persistent, meaning we're not going to take some people that have negative feedback for something and let it derail us. With that persistence, I think the big word is consistency. So we're very consistent in our message. We're consistent in the methodology of how we communicate. We've been a little bit more creative with some of our videos this year. I might be on tape falling into a pool. There's a new video coming out where I might be doing a TikTok dance with my daughter. Spoiler alert. But you have to have some fun with it, but you have to be persistent. They have to know. So for us with the Path, I mentioned the 200th edition is going out this weekend. They know that when they come in Monday, when they turn their system on Monday, the first email they're going to have is from me. It comes from my outbox. It's not robot driven. I hit send every weekend on it. And the feedback that garners and the people that read it over the weekend and the stuff that they send back to me, and when I respond back to them right away, it just solidifies that we are fully engaged with them. So I think that persistence is really around what methodology you want to use, but then be consistent in what your messaging is and don't deviate from it.
Yep. Just making sure. I mean, I think that's true. If showing that you're consistently engaged will also help them be consistently engaged. Right. Yeah.
That is a really critical point, and it's the reason why I hit send to the 7,000 people every weekend that the Path goes to.
No, I love that. And just for those of you, you're welcome, Lourdes. She says thank you. For those of you listening, Brian saying the 200th edition, and you send that out Saturday mornings, right?
I'm not going to lie to you. I might be slipping a little bit. They may go a little bit Sunday afternoon. I've kind of moved into the Sunday afternoon thing when the weather got nice, and I'm like, I kind of like this. So
it's okay.
It goes on the weekends. Let's just say that.
Okay. Very good. And Donna, anything you want to add as we're tying everything up here, or any other questions, people, please feel free to add.
Yeah, no, and if there are any questions in follow-up, Brian and I will be happy to answer those and follow up to you, Christine. But thank you so much for allowing us to be here. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us. And, we learn from you guys, too. So keep up the good work. I've heard several people say, customer service is dead. It's not dead. It's alive and kicking. And people on this call are proof of that. So keep doing what you're doing too.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think if you sense a little bit of passion, it's real. I mean, we kind of like what we do. We know it's look, on my drive into the office this morning, I had a call with Donna. She had a really difficult conversation with a client yesterday. And towards the end of it, she's like, I'm glad that you can kind of laugh. I said, I'm not laughing at the situation. It's just, if you can't kind of get through and use it as a learning experience. And I told her, I said, look, I've been on 100 of those calls, and you got to kind of earn your stripes a little bit and understand positioning what you're doing in the mind's eye of our clients that may not have great awareness of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really important thing. It's how do you balance maybe their frustration with an understanding of what it is that we're doing to make it better. So I agree with Donna. The whole secret to the success of NPS, particularly today, is really around taking friction out of the equation, making it easier, showing it with an eloquent way. And really, if you can even think about and prevent the next question by answering it in advance, I think you get even bigger points for that. So call avoidance is something else that we're really focused on, and bringing the omnichannel to real life. Omnichannel was talked about for years, but no one really knew what it meant. I think the technology is there now. and it really can be an eloquent experience for your clients.
Absolutely. Okay. This was awesome, you guys. Thank you. I've got some thank yous. Thank you, Brian and Donna, for great lessons. So yeah, thank you all for listening. This recording will be made available. If it's something you guys are looking forward to or would like, please let me know. We will send it out to anyone who is registered as well. So thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your week. And I know that we'll be learning even more from you guys soon, and looking forward to more from
All
you
right, in the
here.
spirit of how we close every one of these, you have to go like this.
Oh yeah, I think you're supposed to, yeah, just keep waving till it's over. Bye.
Cool. See you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.